When it comes to the ongoing federal investigation into the WWE, Vince McMahon isn't the only man accused. John Laurinaitis has been accused of directly benefiting from the sexual abuse and trafficking of Janelle Grant. He is accused of using control and coercion against her, but his name also comes up in the reasoning behind Sasha Banks and Naomi leaving the WWE. His legal team have made a statement claiming that he is himself a victim of Vince McMahon, but they have also stated that they are aware of claims from Ashley Mazzaro that she was raped while on a WWE tour. The WWE, including John Laurinaitis and Vince McMahon, seemingly took no action on this. He also invented the RKO. In any other context that would be a fun fact, but in this context it seriously taints the move permanently for me. Today we're going to talk about who John Laurinaitis is, how he's connected to the ongoing investigation into Vince McMahon, and further information about backstage habits and red flags that aren't being shared so publicly. We're going to be naming people like Mickie James, Adam Cole, and AJ Lee in this, in addition to what I've mentioned about Sasha Banks, Naomi, and of course Vince McMahon. The name John Laurinaitis is almost as synonymous with wrestling as Vince McMahon's. Whether as a producer, an agent, or as a wrestler, this man has been involved in everything. Under the name Johnny Ace, he not only invented the Ace Cutter, now used by Randy Orton as the RKO, he also has more 5-star wrestling matches from Dave Meltzer than Seth Rollins or Stone Cold Steve Austin. He also comes from a recognisable wrestling family, being the brother of Road Warrior Animal, for example. His time in the WWE, though, has seen him in the position of Vince McMahon's right-hand man. Most notably telling of this is the fact that John Laurinaitis has been named in 2 pretty intense investigations into Vince McMahon. He's worked creative, he's worked production, and of course, talent relations. This is a man whose fingers have been in every pie. His LinkedIn profile still lists Laurinaitis' official job title as lead producer from June 2001 to the present date, though this has not been updated since he left the company in August 2022. Quietly, and without any actual announcement of it. What he is most commonly known for now is being the primary antagonist against John Cena, against CM Punk, during a difficult time period for the WWE, while elements like The Shield and the Wyatt family were being built. He was Mr. People Power of talent relations. Crooked, selfish and egotistical, there are plenty of suggestions that art will continue to imitate life. The most recent appearance would have been taking a pie from Otis during the 2020 Money in the Bank ladder match at Titan Towers. Laurinaitis was never particularly popular with WWE wrestlers, however, they've always been very open about that fact. In fact, during CM Punk's pipe bomb, he made reference to Laurinaitis as a glad-handing, nonsensical, douchebag yes-man who would tell Vince McMahon everything he wants to hear. Accusations that are currently out there suggest that he really benefited from it. John Laurinaitis replaced Jim Ross as head of talent relations in 2004, and from then until he was quietly released in August 2022, part of his role seemed to be the bearer of bad news, like a Bad News Barrett, but actual worse bad news. WWE are said to have received so many complaints against him that Laurinaitis is known to have apologised to wrestlers after firing them. So not only would he call them up to fire them, he'd call them up afterwards to say, sorry, I was a dick about it. There are several examples of this. Oni Lorcan publicly claimed that his name was misspelled on his release documentation. First and foremost, let's get into some more. Mickie James received her personal belongings from the WWE after being released from the company in a garbage bag. She did not name the executive behind this, but did state that it was someone in talent relations. Laurinaitis once invited Adam Cole to a WWE tryout, accidentally. He had intended to invite Xavier Woods instead. The two share the same non-kayfabe first name, Austin. Adam Cole did not receive a tryout, but did pop up in the background of a CM Punk video. AJ Lee, a vocal supporter of women's wrestling and a vocal advocate even now of feminism, has her own issues with talent relations. In her book, she detailed a backstage official approaching her backstage to say that she was too ugly to succeed in the WWE. John Laurinaitis versus women is going to come up a lot. Laurinaitis also put The Undertaker at some pretty big risk of disease. Cowboy Bob Orton, the father of Randy Orton, was busted open during a 2005 match with The Undertaker at the Armageddon pay-per-view. The spot had been arranged by Laurinaitis. He was fully aware that Bob Orton at the time was suffering from hepatitis. The Undertaker could well have been a pretty serious risk there. All of these things together start to paint a picture of the man himself. Firstly, of how involved with everything John Laurinaitis was, and also his at times careless treatment of wrestlers. His interactions with women are certainly questionable at times, to the point of abusive, and yet he was never at risk of being fired. There are two main reasons that John Laurinaitis left his post in WWE, at least to my understanding. One that led to the women's tag team champions walking out of the company, and the other being the exposure of Vince McMahon. In May 2022, Sasha Banks, now known as Mercedes Money, and Naomi walked out of the WWE after a meeting with John Laurinaitis. Reporting at the time is muddled to say the least, with disagreements between Peter Insider, Fightful Select Paywall, and Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer. Peter Insider claimed that Banks and Naomi were given a meeting with Vince McMahon about a creative position that the duo were unhappy with, this being a six-pack challenge with a number of wrestlers they are said to have been unhappy to work with. The WWE do not mention the meeting with Vince McMahon in their statement, but they did put out a statement that makes everything so much worse. The official WWE statement was drafted by Talent Relations, so I have no doubt of the involvement of John Laurinaitis. They also publicly decried them both on air. The statement reads, "When Sasha Banks and Naomi arrived at the arena this afternoon, they were informed of their participation in the main event of tonight's Monday Night Raw." That's how quickly they got this out there. During the broadcast, they walked into WWE Head of Talent Relations John Laurinaitis' office with their suitcases in hand, placed their tag team championship belts on his desk, and walked out. They claimed they weren't respected enough as tag team champions, and even though they had 8 hours to rehearse and construct their match, they claimed they were uncomfortable in the ring with two of their opponents, even though they'd had matches with those individuals in the past with no consequence. Monday Night Raw is a scripted live TV show whose characters are expected to perform the requirements of their contract. We regret we were unable to deliver as advertised tonight's main event. Reading into this, Sasha Banks and Naomi were the tag team champions at the time, and those tag team championships had not been taken seriously at any point. In many ways, the creation of them was to shut Sasha Banks and Bayley up. They gave the two of them the championships and then essentially forgot that they existed. The implication from that statement is that Sasha Banks and Naomi were uncomfortable working with Becky Lynch and Asuka, as they had not previously worked with the other two people in that match. The intention was that Naomi would be the winner of that match and go on for a singles championship match which she would lose against Bianca Belair. Personally, I don't see that as the worst position for the tag team championships, but it is pretty clear that the WWE kept forgetting that they had them. Naomi responded to the statement on Instagram. "The moment you put a stop to people taking advantage of you and disrespecting you is when they define you as difficult, selfish, or crazy. Manipulators hate boundaries." Let's read those last 3 words out again, because this was speaking about people like John Laurinaitis that they very clearly had the meeting with. Manipulators hate boundaries. As we get to more of the accusations, you will see more of why that's important. Fightful reported behind their paywall that Sasha Banks had a meeting either with Vince McMahon or John Laurinaitis, but it wasn't clear if Naomi was there. Dave Meltzer disputed that, saying it was clearly both. Fightful also claimed that it was Becky Lynch and Asuka that the WWE believed Banks and Naomi didn't want to work with, which seems ridiculous given their histories. They'd worked with them both in the past. As I reported at the time, Sasha Banks and Naomi were prevented from having a meeting with Vince McMahon. They wanted to air their concerns and perhaps make some changes to the match, but Vince McMahon was unwilling to hold the meeting, or that's what they were told by Talent Relations. I was told that it was John Laurinaitis who prevented the meeting, and he was heard shouting at both in the corridors of the arena well before the match was due to take place. Naomi recently returned to the WWE many months after John Laurinaitis left, whereas Mercedes Money has signed with competitor All Elite Wrestling after turning down a WWE offer. I've reported on that previously in the WTF Wrestling playlist. Go into the playlist and you'll see it all there. While this was a major incident, it apparently still wasn't enough for Vince McMahon's WWE to take action. John Laurinaitis was later named by the Wall Street Journal in an investigation into Vince McMahon about hush money payments and false non-disclosure agreements that McMahon was allegedly using to hide affairs and inappropriate relationships. EC3, who previously worked in the WWE, has openly stated that there were people within the WWE who only worked there because, and I quote, they knew where the bodies were hidden. If someone is in this much trouble this often, with this many complaints, and yet they still have the job, I certainly have questions about the validity of their position there. The fact that it took the allegations in question coming to light, and then more allegations came of a more intense variety, certainly raises further questions for me, particularly when you consider what John Laurinaitis' tactic seems to be for his defense. You see, John Laurinaitis may be gone, but he certainly hasn't been forgotten. He was named in the most recent allegations raised by Janelle Grant into Vince McMahon, amongst other things, such as being coerced into a breakfast sexual arrangement with Laurinaitis. Grant accused McMahon and Laurinaitis of forcing her into a threesome with them in Vince McMahon's office whilst her colleagues were working outside. It is the nature of the beast that I have to say if this happened. But if this happened, and there are people who were sat there hearing this, and they haven't said anything about it, then I don't know what the point of the human race is in general. John Laurinaitis has not denied these allegations. Instead, his lawyer stated that he was himself a victim of Vince McMahon. Whilst this certainly isn't an admission of guilt, it's an omission of defense. Laurinaitis has also lit a fire underneath comments previously made by Vince McMahon about Ashley Mazzaro. More details on those are available in last week's WTF Wrestling, which I'll link at the end of this video. The tactic seems to be to not bother defending, to say, yeah, maybe this did happen, but it wasn't my fault. The tactic seems to be scorched earth and take Vince McMahon down with him, but that's just speculation on my part. Laurinaitis has been named by Janelle Grant and is being formally accused by her. There is a high chance as well that he is a person of interest in the federal investigation into Vince McMahon, if not being actively investigated himself. While confirmed evidence into these allegations is few and far between at this point, his lack of any attempt at a defense is startling. The portrait painted of Vince's right-hand man is someone arrogant, misogynistic, and controlling, and that's just the on-air side. When this does eventually come to trial, I do not have high expectations in his ability to defend himself. More seems likely to come out, and based on what he said already, he seems to be the one willing to make it come out. This will get worse before it gets better, and we all need to know more about who John Laurinaitis is so that we can know reasonably what to expect and how to judge people like Vince McMahon who allowed this man to continue working for the WWE. Let me know if there's anything I've missed in the comments. Watch last week's WTF Wrestling on Ashley Mazzaro on screen now if you want the fullest picture possible into what's going on with the WWE and Vince McMahon right now. Until then, thank you and goodbye.